How good is man's life, the mere living, fit to employ all the heart, soul, and senses for ever enjoy. हेलो स्टूडेंट्स, जनवरी की इस कंपकपाती सर्दी में हम जॉय, जोश, विगर एंड होप की बात करने वाले विक्टोरियन पोइट रॉबर्ट ब्राउनिंग को डिस्कस करेंगे. बट बिफोर वी डिस्कस पोइट, एज वी नो, every text and certainly the author also comes out of its context. They are the product of their historical milieu. Time certainly affects the creation. तो रॉबर्ट ब्राउनिंग, जिनको हमने लेबल किया एज विक्टोरियन पोइट, उस विक्टोरियन पीरियड के फीचर्स डिस्कस कर लेते हैं, क्योंकि उस पीरियड के बाद इस पोइट को जानना और भी इंटरेस्टिंग रहेगा. टू डिस्कस विद यू द फीचर्स ऑफ विक्टोरियन पोइट, इट्स एन एरा ऑफ रैपिड चेंजेस एंड पैराडॉक्सेस. It was an age of faith and age of doubt, an age of morality and an age of hypocrisy, of prosperity and poverty, age of idealism and materialism, of progress and decline, of splendor and squalor. It was a solemn age, but produced more humorous writers. Because of the scientific discoveries of Charles Darwin and Herbert Spencer, this age is called the age of restlessness, because the religious base was not there. Advancement of science transformed man's outlook on life and encouraged the materialistic outlook. Industrial revolution has already changed the agrarian England into industrial economy, which Wordsworth lamented, and the world is too much with us. Late and soon, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers, little we see in nature that is ours. No doubt, Victorian scientists started seeing meaning in nature, but not in the Wordsworthian sense. To them, nature was non-human. It was red in tooth and claw, questioning note in claw, pessimism of James Thomson, wistful melancholy of Matthew Arnold, fatalism of Fitzgerald, lyricism of Tennyson. Browning, our poet of discussion for today, is far apart from them. Browning remained undisturbed. He could write, God is in heaven and all is right with the world. It's not strange that History of English Literature by T.C., which labels Victorian period as an age of pessimism, where poets see only dark side of things between two words, one dead and the other powerless to be born, does not include any question of Robert Browning. And the poet under discussion, our poet for today, becomes the unrepresentative poet of Victorian period. Arnold, with his doubtfulness, and Tennyson, with his questioning note, are much more in line with their context. Industrial revolution converted England from agrarian countryside to industrial empire. But Browning kept his chin above among all commotion of all doubts. He believed such optimism was essentially alien to Victorian spirit. Well, now coming to the biography of poet Robert Browning. He was born in 1812 at Camberwell. Browning was fascinated by Shelley, romantic poet Shelley. His love for liberty and his revolt against convention and oppression. Even his early poetry, Browning, even in his early poetry, reveals his faith in a love and God. Only he could write, God is in heaven and all is right with the world. Because of his invincible will and optimism, Browning is regarded as poet who has spoken the strongest word of faith. His words are a beguile call for good living. ब्राउनिंग को जानना है, पढ़ना है, एंजॉय करना है, तो स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट है ड्रामेटिक मोनोलॉग्स. और ड्रामेटिक मोनोलॉग्स में स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट है माई लास्ट डचेस. क्योंकि उनका इंटरेस्ट ड्रामा में था, दूसरे कैरेक्टर्स में था. ड्रामा उनके सक्सेसफुल रहे नहीं. ट्राई किया उन्होंने बिगनिंग में, बट सक्सेसफुल रहे नहीं. तो ये ड्रामेटिक मोनोलॉग टाइप की पोइट्री थी, ये इनके जीनियस को पूरी तरह से सूट करती थी। ड्रामेटिक मोनोलॉग्स के अंदर ही गोज इन टू द सोल ऑफ द पर्सन। डिफरेंट ड्रामेटिक मोनोलॉग्स उनके हैं। लास्ट राइड टुगेदर, Porphyria's lover, The Bishop Orders His Tomb, Rabbi Ben Ezra, Andrea del Sarto, Fra Lippi. He presents a total scene, a gallery of characters like a Chaucer. And after reading all these dramatic monologues, you will notice the main features, the main characteristics of his poetry are that he probes into the soul. He works like a digger, a miner who is giving the material, gold and dross mix, and it depends on the reader to differentiate. His poetry is objective, psychological, philosophical. Not of optimism is there. It's complex and obscure because of the style. Because he is not finishing it. Thoughts are, it's a shower of thoughts are coming over there. He is with the person on the journey to perfection. In spite of having the imperfections, a lot of imperfections, he enjoys the soul's journey towards perfection. That is the main interesting thing about Browning. He is not a lyrical. He is not going after the musical. He is not sacrificing sound to sense. He has taken the Keats' negative capability. He loses himself into his character. In spite of the scientific theories are there, biblical view of creation was shaken. All around there was the spirit of restlessness. But still, he becomes the greatest love poet. His faith in love, his faith in God makes him the wonderful poet, not only of the Victorian period, but even today. The message of his poetry is overcoming all the obstacles of life. He gives a call, I can and I will, and life is worth living. What's interesting about him? He is a poet of hope, but this hope lies in the imperfections of man. He finds all things good. He portrays a wide variety of characters crooks, cowards, scholars, poets, magicians, painters, dukes, murderers, cheats, etc. He sympathizes with everyone and takes under his span unusual, unnatural, abnormal, complex, uncommon, subtle. He sneaked peeked into the complex things and enjoyed because, in spite of all these things, this life is worth living. His firm faith in the existence of God, which gives him this hope. This faith is the main source of his optimism. He is a singer of the joys of life. Browning's characters David, Piper, Duchess, Andrea del Sarto, Bishop, morally lofty or morally low, all are keenly alive to the pleasures of senses. I was always a fighter, the best in the last. He faces life like this. And he dreams big. A man's reach must be above his grasp. Oh, what's heaven for? He is not as lyrical as Tennyson is, and he is careless in his style. There arises a difficulty in reading Browning, but in spite of the obscurity of his style, his message that life is worth living, and with this message, he inspired the doubtful Victorians, and his poetry is undoubtedly able to keep us motivated and spirited in the present pandemic struck times. Hope to meet you in future with poetry of Browning. Bye for now. Take care. Stay motivated. Keep learning. Thank you, students. Thanks.